A taxi driver records the time required to complete various trips and the distance for each trip. Here we see a scatter plot with time in minutes recorded on the horizontal axis and distance in miles recorded on the vertical axis. We also see a blue line drawn sort of through the middle of the points on our scatter plot, and that blue line is the best fit line. We're actually given the equation of that line. It is y equals 0.467x plus 0.417, where y represents the distance in miles and x represents the time for the trip in minutes. We're going to use this equation to answer parts A and B below. In part A, we want to use the best fit line to estimate the distance for a trip that takes 20 minutes. 20 minutes, that is a time, right? So we are going to take that 20 and we are going to replace the x in the equation with 20, right? Because we were told earlier that x represents time. Since I have a value for x, I can put it into my equation. So let's do that. I'm going to rewrite the equation. But instead of putting x, I'm going to put a 20 in parentheses. Now I have y equals 0.467 times 20. In algebra, in an expression like this, the parentheses represent multiplication, and then plus 0.417. This is something that you could put in a calculator, and if we do that, we get y equals 9.757. Y equals 9.757 tells us that a trip that takes 20 minutes can be expected to be about 9.757 miles. In part B, we're going to use the best fit line to estimate the time for a trip that is 6 miles long. 6 miles long is a distance. So in this case, we are going to replace the y in the equation because y represents distance. So let's rewrite our equation with a 6 in place of the y. Unfortunately, we cannot just put this in a calculator and get the answer super quickly. We are going to have to solve this equation for x, right? Because to find out what x equals, I need to isolate it or get it by itself on one side of the equation. My first step to do that is going to be to subtract 0.417 from both sides. And when I say both sides, I mean both sides of the equal sign. So I subtract it once on the right side of the equal sign, and I subtract it once on the left side of the equal sign. On the right side of the equal sign, positive 0.417 and negative 0.417 cancel out. So I'm left with just 0.467x on the right. On the left, 6 minus 0.417, that's something I could put in a calculator, and I get 5.583. So now my equation says 5.583 equals 0.467x. 0.467x means 0.467 times x, so I need to use division to undo that multiplication. So I'm going to divide both sides by 0.467. On the right side of the equation, 0.467x divided by 0.467 leaves me with just x. And 5.583 divided by 0.467 is definitely something I would put in a calculator. And when I do put this in the calculator, I get approximately 11.955. I rounded this answer. When I put this in the calculator, I get a very, very long decimal. I rounded it to 3 numbers after the decimal. So 11.955 equals x. We solved this equation. Now we need to figure out, what does this tell us? Well, x represents time. So 11.955 equals x tells us that a trip that is 6 miles long can be expected to take about 11.955 minutes. Which is about 11 minutes and 57 seconds.